Do you ever wonder what it was like to be a queen in a world dominated by men? From the crumbling empires of Byzantium to the war-torn battlefields of England, did their deepest affections and scandalous desires secretly twist the very course of medieval history, from the 5th to the 15th century? Number 1. Theodora of Byzantium. The spotlight hits the ancient hippodrome in Constantinople, not on the emperor's grand box, but on the stage itself. Here, a woman named Theodora once captivated audiences not as an empress, but as an actress. Her origins were humble. Her father reportedly a bear trainer for the Green faction of the Hippodrome. She was famous or infamous, depending on who you asked, for her beauty, wit, and daring performances that pushed the boundaries of public decency for the time. Stories swirled around her, whispered through the crowded streets of the capital about her independent life and her various relationships. Chroniclers like Procopius, though often hostile in his secret histories, detailed her early life in vivid, if biased strokes, depicting a woman who lived by her own rules in a world full of male control. She was not born into power. She was not born into wealth, but she possessed an undeniable charisma and a sharp mind. Then came Justinian. He was a man destined for the throne, nephew to the reigning emperor, Justin I. He saw Theodora not just as an entertainer, but as someone intelligent, ambitious, and capable of wielding immense influence. Their connection was immediate and profound, a bond that transcended the rigid social norms of their era. Justinian fell deeply in love with her, a love that would change the course of the Byzantine Empire. The idea of an emperor marrying an actress was unheard of, scandalous even. Roman law even had restrictions against men of senatorial rank marrying women of the stage. But Justinian was unwavering in his desire. He convinced his uncle, Emperor Justin I, to amend the law specifically so he could marry Theodora. This act, driven purely by his personal affection and determination, shattered centuries of tradition and public expectation. Their marriage, consecrated around 525 AD, was a true love match, but it was also a political earthquake that reverberated through the highest echelons of Byzantine society. Once married, Theodora did not simply become a docile empress in the shadows. Her love for Justinian and his reciprocal trust in her meant she was a partner in every sense of the word. When Justinian ascended the throne in 527 AD, Theodora became Augusta, empress, and a formidable co-ruler. She was present at imperial councils. Her opinions were sought and often decisive, and she even received foreign envoys independently. Her influence on Justinian was legendary. Her sharp political instincts were put to the ultimate test during the Nika riots of 532 AD. This was a massive popular uprising fueled by chariot racing factions that threatened to overthrow Justinian's reign. The emperor and his advisors were on the verge of fleeing the capital, succumbing to the overwhelming mob. It was Theodora who stood firm. According to Procopius's History of the Wars, she delivered a powerful speech, famously declaring, "Royalty is a good burial shroud." She refused to flee, stating that she would rather die an empress than live as a refugee. Her courage and conviction revitalized Justinian and his generals, leading to the brutal suppression of the riot and the securing of their throne. Her sheer resolve, born from a deep connection to her husband, and their shared power saved the empire from collapse at that critical moment. Theodora's love for Justinian was intertwined with her passion for justice and social reform. She used her position to champion the rights of women and the disadvantaged areas where her personal experiences likely gave her unique insight. She enacted laws to protect women from forced prostitution, established institutions for former prostitutes, defined new lives, and increased the legal rights of women in marriage and divorce. Her influence on the legal code known as the Justinian Code was profound. Historians like James Allen Evans note that her advocacy led to significant changes in Byzantine law concerning property, marriage, and the treatment of women. The empress's personal connection to Justinian allowed her to push through reforms that fundamentally altered the lives of countless citizens. A testament to how her love and partnership with the emperor directly shaped the social fabric of an entire empire. Even in their private lives, their bond was unusually close for medieval monarchs. They were known to eat together, discuss state affairs late into the night, and share a deep intellectual companionship. This intimate partnership meant that Justinian rarely made a significant decision without Theodora's input, making her an indispensable force in the Byzantine government. Her love life, in the broadest sense of her deep and bodic relationship with Justinian, was not just a private affair. It was the engine of an imperial power couple who revived Roman law, expanded the empire, and navigated treacherous political waters. Her ascent from a low-born performer to empress, powered by Justinian's devotion and her own formidable will, continues to fascinate historians. Their mutual affection and respect forged a political alliance that profoundly impacted the empire's legal system, its social reforms, and its very survival, laying the groundwork for much of the Byzantine legacy that followed. Her story stands as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most profound changes begin with an unconventional love. Number 2. Melisende of Jerusalem. Inheriting a kingdom in the heart of a volatile, war-torn region, a kingdom built on the precarious foundations of Crusader conquests, that was the reality for Melisende, the daughter of King Baldwin II of Jerusalem. From her earliest days, she was educated and groomed to rule, her father ensuring she received the training typically reserved for male heirs. As the eldest and favorite daughter, she was designated his successor, a highly unusual move for the time. This designation, born of a deep paternal love and trust, set the stage for a dramatic story of power, love, and conflict that would shake the foundations of the Latin East. When Baldwin II felt his health failing, he arranged a marriage for Melisende to a powerful European nobleman, Fulk, V of Anjou, a widower with his own impressive lineage, and an adult son, Geoffrey Plantagenet. The union was intended to secure the future of the kingdom, bringing much-needed military support and a strong hand to co-rule with Melisende. The marriage between Melisende and Fulk in 1129 was initially one of political necessity, but it was also a personal union designed to produce an heir and solidify the ruling dynasty. As the king's designated successor, Melisende's position was made clear in the marriage contract. She was to rule as queen, not merely as consort. However, once their son Baldwin III was born, and King Baldwin II died in 1131, the dynamic shifted. Fulk, accustomed to absolute rule in Anjou, began to sideline Melisende, infringing upon her established rights as co-ruler. He excluded her from important decisions and appointed his own loyalists to key positions, undermining her authority. Contemporary chroniclers like William of Tyre, while sometimes critical, document Fulk's attempts to consolidate power for himself, marginalizing the queen who was legally his equal. This struggle for power within their marriage became a central conflict, creating deep fissures within the court and among the kingdom's nobility. The tension within the royal couple's love life, or rather, their lack of a harmonious power-sharing arrangement, escalated dramatically. Fulk's attempts to dominate led to a significant rift, and rumors began to circulate about Melisende's personal life. The most damaging of these rumors involved Hugh II of Le Puiset, Count of Jaffa, a powerful vassal and kinsman of Melisende. Hugh was accused of treason and an affair with the queen, allegations that fueled the flames of discontent. Whether true or not, these whispers served Fulk's agenda, giving him a pretext to further isolate Melisende and consolidate his own power. However, Melisende was not easily pushed aside. Her supporters, angered by Fulk's usurpation of her rightful authority, rallied around her. This led to a brief but intense civil war in 1134. Forces loyal to Melisende and Hugh clashed with Fulk's troops, demonstrating how deeply personal grievances within the royal couple had spilled over into armed conflict, threatening the stability of the entire kingdom. Crisis culminated in a major council convened by the Patriarch and the Church, acting as mediators. The outcome was a forced reconciliation, not necessarily of their personal affections, but of their political power. Fulk was compelled to acknowledge Melisende's co-regency and her rightful place as ruler. They would rule jointly, with Melisende's name appearing on official documents alongside Fulk's. This political compromise, achieved through open conflict fueled by their marital strife, restored a degree of stability, but it showed the immense power Melisende wielded and her determination to protect her inherited rights. Conflict born from the tensions of their shared rule and the rumors surrounding Melisende's fidelity had directly shaped the governance of the Crusader kingdom, forcing a clear definition of the queen's authority. Upon Fulk's unexpected death in 1143, Melisende immediately assumed full regency for their young son, Baldwin III. Despite the earlier power struggles, her rule was marked by a period of relative prosperity and cultural flourishing for the Kingdom of Jerusalem. She demonstrated considerable diplomatic skill and military acumen, maintaining stability in a region constantly threatened by external forces. However, as Baldwin III grew older, a new tension arose within their familial love life. Baldwin, influenced by some nobles, began to assert his own right to rule, challenging his mother's continued hold on power. This, again, led to a civil war in 1152, a conflict between mother and son, born from the natural desire for power succession, but intensified by the lingering memory of Melisende's previous struggles. Ultimately, Baldwin III won, and Melisende retired to a private life, though she continued to exert significant influence through her patronage and counsel. Her love for her son, her fierce determination to preserve the kingdom for him, and her earlier struggles for her own rights had shaped two distinct periods of civil conflict and established a precedent for powerful female rule in a critical era of medieval history. The legacy of Melisende's love life, fraught with power struggles and accusations, left an indelible mark on the Crusader states, demonstrating how personal relationships could ignite widespread political. Number 3. Eleanor of Aquitaine. Imagine being the most eligible woman in Europe, the heir to a vast wealthy duchy that stretched from the Loire Valley to the Pyrenees. This was Eleanor of Aquitaine, born around 1122. Her childhood was marked by a love for poetry, music, and the chivalric arts, a culture that flourished in her father's court. When her father, William X, died in 1137, she inherited Aquitaine, making her an incredibly powerful and sought-after bride. Her destiny was sealed by a prearranged marriage to Louis the heir to the French throne. This union, driven by political ambition, immediately transformed the balance of power in France, uniting Aquitaine with the royal domain. Their marriage was consecrated in 1137, and soon after, Louis became King Louis VII of France. From the outset, their love life was complicated. Louis was pious and austere, deeply religious and unsuited to the vibrant, liberal court Eleanor was accustomed to. Eleanor, by contrast, was spirited, intelligent, and known for her independent mind. Their early years of marriage were marked by the demands of the French court and the need for an heir. However, their personalities clashed and their relationship grew increasingly strained. A pivotal moment in their love life occurred during the Second Crusade. Eleanor insisted on accompanying Louis to the Holy Land, a controversial move for a queen. She traveled with her own household, including women who dressed as Amazons, further cementing her image as unconventional. While on crusade, rumors of impropriety swirled around her, particularly concerning her uncle Raymond of Antioch, and even a Saracen leader. These whispers, fueled by the frustrations of the crusade and the growing animosity between Louis and Eleanor, deeply damaged their public image and contributed to the decay of their marriage. Chronicler Odo of Dea, who accompanied the crusade, noted the discord between the royal couple, highlighting the queen's alleged flirtations and her refusal to follow her husband's directives. Their mutual disappointment and personal grievances during this grand religious undertaking were a direct consequence of their incompatible personalities and Louis's inability to control his formidable wife. Upon their return from the crusade, it was clear their marriage was beyond repair. They had only produced 2 daughters, which was a significant problem for a king desperate for a male heir to secure the Capetian dynasty. The official reason for their annulment in 1152 was consanguinity. They were too closely related. However, the real reasons were their starkly different temperaments, the public scandal of the crusade, and the lack of a male heir. This annulment, a direct result of their failed love life and personal incompatibility, was a monumental event that completely reshaped the map of Europe. It freed Eleanor, and crucially, it freed her vast lands of Aquitaine. The annulment was not merely a private affair. It was a state-level decision with colossal political implications. Just weeks after her annulment from the King of France, Eleanor made an even more audacious move. She married Henry Plantagenet, Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou, who was 11 years her junior. This decision was audacious not only because of Henry's age, but because he was the most powerful vassal of Louis VII. Their marriage, driven by mutual ambition and perhaps a spark of genuine attraction, immediately created a superstate. When Henry became King Henry II of England in 1154, Eleanor became Queen of England and her lands of Aquitaine were united with England, Normandy, and Anjou, forming the vast Angevin Empire, stretching from Scotland to the Pyrenees. This second marriage, a direct consequence of the failure of her first, fundamentally altered the political landscape of Western Europe, setting the stage for centuries of conflict between England and France. Their love life was initially passionate and fruitful, producing 8 children, including the future kings, Richard the Lionheart and John. Their combined energy and ambition forged a powerful empire. However, even this powerful union forged by love and ambition eventually fractured. Henry was notoriously unfaithful, and Eleanor, ever the independent spirit, could not tolerate his philandering or his attempts to exert absolute control over her and her lands. Their relationship deteriorated, especially after Eleanor encouraged her sons to rebel against their father in 1173. This rebellion, partly fueled by Eleanor's resentment over Henry's infidelities and her desire for her sons to have more power, was a direct consequence of their troubled love life. Henry brutally suppressed the revolt and in a shocking move imprisoned Eleanor for 16 years. This extraordinary act, a result of their personal and political clash, meant that the queen who had once held the reins of power was confined, a testament to the bitter end of a once dynamic marriage. Even from prison, Eleanor's influence endured. When Henry II died in 1189, her favorite son, Richard the Lionheart, ascended the throne and immediately released her. As Queen Mother, Eleanor resumed her formidable political role, ruling England as regent while Richard was on crusade and later imprisoned. She personally undertook the arduous task of raising Richard's ransom, traveling across Europe in her 70s. After Richard's death, she actively supported her son John's claim to the throne, ensuring the succession. Eleanor of Aquitaine's love lives 2 grand alliances that began with high hopes and ended in dramatic fashion were not merely personal sagas. They were seismic events that redrew borders, sparked wars, and shaped the political destinies of 2 of Europe's greatest medieval powers, leaving an indelible mark on the historical record. Number 4, Isabella of France. She was known as the She-Wolf of France, a moniker that speaks volumes about her fearsome reputation and her pivotal role in English history. Isabella was born around 1295 the daughter of the powerful and imposing King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair. Her beauty was celebrated and her French royal blood made her an ideal match for England's heir. In 1308, at just 12 years old, she married Edward II of England in a lavish ceremony in Boulogne. The marriage was intended to bring peace and strengthen the alliance between England and France, two rival kingdoms. From the outset, however, their love life was doomed, not by a lack of initial attraction, but by Edward's profound and open favoritism towards other men. Edward II's reign was famously tumultuous, dominated by his intense personal relationships with male favorites, most notably Piers Gaveston, and later Hugh Despenser the Younger. These relationships, which Edward pursued with an almost defiant disregard for public opinion and the needs of his kingdom, deeply alienated his nobility and, crucially, his queen. Isabella, a proud French princess, found herself increasingly marginalized and humiliated. Chroniclers like Jean Froissart and the Vita Edwardi Secondi, Life of Edward II, detail how Gaveston and later Despenser were lavished with wealth, power, and the king's almost exclusive, a dower land stripped away, and her political influence diminished. This was not just a personal slight. It was a public affront to her status as queen, and a direct threat to her security and that of her children. King's intense affections for his favorites directly created a deep chasm in his marriage, leading to years of frustration and resentment for Isabella. The animosity reached a boiling point with Hugh Despenser the Younger. Despenser's greed and control over Edward were absolute, eclipsing all others, including the Queen. He confiscated Isabella's lands, withheld her funds, and even barred her from seeing her own children. This systemic abuse, a direct consequence of Edward's unwavering love and loyalty to Despenser, drove Isabella to desperation. In 1325, the opportunity arose for her to travel to France on a diplomatic mission ostensibly to negotiate a peace treaty with her brother, King Charles IV. This trip, allowed by Edward because of his trust in Despenser, became Isabella's escape. She refused to return to England, effectively abandoning her husband and signaling the complete breakdown of their royal marriage and her intense resentment over his love life. While in France, Isabella became a magnet for English exiles and disgruntled nobles who opposed Edward II and the Despensers. It was during this period that she met Roger Mortimer, a powerful and Medic English nobleman who had been imprisoned by Edward but had escaped to France. Their meeting ignited a passionate affair, a love affair that would shatter the political stability of England. Mortimer, ambitious and ruthless, became Isabella's lover and her most trusted advisor. Their shared hatred for Edward II and the Despensers, coupled with their romantic bond, forged an unstoppable alliance. Their love life was not just a private indiscretion. It was a public declaration of rebellion against the king. Chroniclers were quick to note their intimate relationship, making it clear that their personal connection was a driving force behind their political actions. United by love and a burning desire for revenge, Isabella and Mortimer began planning an invasion of England. They gathered support, raised funds, and assembled a small but determined force. In September 1326, they landed in England, and their arrival sparked an immediate uprising. Edward II, abandoned by many of his former allies and despised for his favoritism and the Despensers' tyranny, found his kingdom crumbling. Isabella and Mortimer's forces marched virtually unopposed. The Despensers were captured and executed, their demise a direct consequence of the Queen's vengeful love affair. Edward II was quickly captured and, in a move orchestrated by Isabella and Mortimer, was formally deposed by Parliament in January 1327. His son, Edward III, was crowned king, but true power lay in the hands of Isabella and her lover Roger Mortimer, who ruled as de facto regents. The fate of Edward II, who died shortly after his deposition in mysterious circumstances at Berkeley Castle, was also a direct consequence of his wife's decisive action, fueled by her dramatic love life and quest for power. For several years, Isabella and Mortimer ruled England, their personal relationship at the heart of the kingdom's governance. They lived openly, as a couple wielding absolute authority and acquiring vast wealth and influence. However, their rule was controversial, and Mortimer's arrogance quickly alienated many of the nobility, including the young King Edward III. As Edward III came of age, he resented his mother's lover and their firm grip on power. In a dramatic coup, in 1330, Edward III, supported by a group of loyal nobles, seized Mortimer at Nottingham Castle. Mortimer was swiftly tried and executed for treason, his meteoric rise and fall directly linked to his love affair with the Queen. Isabella, stripped of her power, and her lover was sent into comfortable but enforced retirement, spending the rest of her life in seclusion at Castle Rising. The she-wolf of France, driven by a devastatingly unhappy royal marriage and a passionate, vengeful love affair, had completely overthrown a king and reshaped the English monarchy, leaving an unforgettable bloody mark on the annals of medieval history. Number 5. Philippa of Hainaut. Her name might not conjure the same dramatic scandal as some other queens, but Philippa of Hainaut, born around 1314, stands out as a queen whose steadfast love and quiet influence profoundly shaped one of England's most defining periods. Daughter of William I, Count of Hainaut, Philippa was chosen as the bride for Edward III of England, a political match orchestrated by Isabella of France and Roger Mortimer. Her arrival in England in 1327, shortly after Edward II's deposition, marked the beginning of a 40-year marriage that would be remarkably stable, loving, and fruitful, a rare example in medieval royalty. She was crowned Queen of England in 1328, and quickly her warm and amiable personality began to win over the English court and people. Edward III, initially under the shadow of his mother, and Mortimer, quickly matured into one of England's most ambitious and successful kings. Philippa's relationship with him was not just a political alliance. It blossomed into a deep and enduring love. They had 13 children, a remarkable number for any royal couple, and their large, thriving family brought stability and continuity to the English succession. This domestic harmony, nurtured by their strong personal bond, stood in stark contrast to the tumultuous and often bloody royal marriages that preceded and followed theirs. Chroniclers of the time such as Jean Froissart frequently portrayed their relationship as affectionate and mutually respectful, highlighting how Edward trusted and valued Philippa's counsel. This consistent, loving partnership was a foundational element of Edward III's reign, providing a stable home front as he launched England into the 100 Years' War. Philippa's influence, stemming from her husband's deep affection and respect, extended beyond the nursery. She was not merely a passive queen. She was an active participant in the governance and diplomacy of the kingdom. During Edward III's frequent absences on military campaigns in France, Philippa often served as regent, demonstrating her administrative capabilities. Her strategic acumen was evident in 1346 during the Battle of Neville's Cross. While Edward was campaigning in France, King David II of Scotland invaded England, seizing the opportunity. Philippa personally rode among the English troops, encouraging them, and played a crucial role in rallying the defense. The English victory was decisive, and King David II was captured. This act of courage and leadership, driven by her loyalty and love for her husband and her adopted country, solidified her reputation as a formidable queen and directly contributed to a major military success that secured England's northern border. Perhaps one of the most famous examples of Philippa's powerful influence through her love life occurred during the Siege of Calais in 1347. After a long and arduous siege, the starving citizens of Calais were forced to surrender to Edward III. The king, enraged by their stubborn resistance, initially demanded that 6 of the town's leading burghers present themselves with ropes around their necks, ready for execution to spare the rest of the population. This was a harsh demand, typical of medieval warfare. However, Philippa, who had joined Edward at the siege, intervened. According to Froissart, she fell to her knees before her husband, tearfully pleading with him to spare the lives of the burghers, appealing to his mercy and their shared humanity. Her heartfelt plea, a direct appeal to her husband's love and compassion, moved Edward. He relented, pardoning the men and saving the city from further retribution. This act of clemency, born directly from Philippa's personal intervention and her strong bond with Edward, became a celebrated moment, burnishing the image of Edward III as a chivalrous king and highlighting the Queen's profound moral influence over her husband. Philippa also played a significant role in fostering trade in the arts. Her Flemish background, particularly her connection to the wool industry, influenced Edward III's policies. She encouraged Flemish weavers to settle in England, helping to establish the English textile industry, which became a cornerstone of the English economy for centuries. Her patronage of colleges, notably Queen's College, Oxford, demonstrated her commitment to education and culture. Her steady hand and supportive presence provided a crucial foundation for Edward III's ambitious military campaigns and his vision of a chivalrous court. The stability of their marriage and the mutual affection they shared created an environment where Edward could pursue his grand designs without the domestic strife that plagued many other monarchs. While her love life did not involve scandalous affairs or dramatic annulments, its very stability and devotion were profoundly historical. Philippa of Hainault's strong, affectionate relationship with Edward III shaped the image of the English monarchy, provided crucial leadership during times of war, and fostered an era of relative prosperity and cultural growth. Her ability to influence her powerful husband through love and respect, culminating in acts of mercy and strategic support, demonstrates how a queen's stable and influential love life could be just as ably as one marked by conflict and compassion. She remains a testament to the power of a deep marital bond in the rough-and-tumble world of medieval European politics. Number 6. Margaret of Anjou. Her story is steeped in the bitter rivalry of the Wars of the Roses, a conflict that tore England apart for decades. Margaret of Anjou, born in 1430, was a French princess, daughter of René, Duke of Anjou, and a niece of the King of France. Her marriage to King Henry VI of England in 1445 was not a love match in the romantic sense, but a political move designed to secure peace between England and France after years of the 100 Years' War. The union was supposed to usher in an era of Anglo-French harmony. However, the truce proved fragile and the peace was unpopular in England, especially among those who had lost land in France. This immediate political baggage already complicated the royal couple's love life and set the stage for future conflict. Henry VI was a deeply pious, gentle, and scholarly man, better suited to monastic life than ruling a kingdom. He suffered from bouts of severe mental illness, which often rendered him completely catatonic and unable to govern. This devastating personal condition profoundly impacted his love life and, by extension, the stability of England. Margaret, strong-willed, intelligent, and fiercely protective, found herself married to a king who was frequently incapacitated and unable to provide the decisive leadership the realm desperately needed. Early in their marriage, Margaret struggled to conceive an heir, adding pressure to their relationship and the dynasty. The birth of their only son, Edward of Westminster, in 1453 seemed like a blessing, but it immediately sparked controversy. Henry was suffering one of his worst periods of mental incapacitation at the time, leading some to whisper doubts about the child's paternity. These insidious rumors, a direct consequence of Henry's condition, fueled the animosity of the rival House of York, led by Richard, Duke of York, who saw an opportunity to press his own claim to the throne. Margaret's love life with Henry VI was defined by her unwavering loyalty and profound devotion to him, and, more importantly, to their son. As Henry's mental health deteriorated, Margaret stepped into the void, effectively ruling the kingdom on his behalf. Her fierce determination to protect her husband's crown and ensure her son's succession was the driving force behind her actions. When Richard of York sought to become protector of the realm during one of Henry's incapacitations, Margaret vehemently opposed him, seeing it as a direct threat to her husband's authority and her son's inheritance. This maternal and wifely devotion, interpreted by her enemies as ruthless ambition, directly ignited the Wars of the Roses. Historians like J. Pollard note that Margaret's vigorous defense of her husband's rights and her son's future was a key catalyst for the conflict, directly linking her love life, her fierce loyalty to her family, to the outbreak of civil war. The Wars of the Roses saw Margaret transformed from a queen consort into a formidable military and political leader. She personally led armies, raised funds, and tirelessly campaigned across England and beyond, seeking support for the Lancastrian cause. Passion was legendary, and she fought with a ferocity that earned her both respect and fear. At the First Battle of St. Albans in 1455, the first major battle of the wars, she was forced to witness her husband's capture and the defeat of her forces. This personal heartbreak only strengthened her resolve. She orchestrated alliances, often with her French family, and was constantly on the move, rallying support for her mentally fragile husband and their young heir. Her love life in this context was an unwavering commitment to her family's dynastic survival, which manifested as relentless warfare. She endured incredible hardship, including fleeing into exile, but always returned determined to restore her husband and son to their rightful place. Her relentless efforts to secure her family's future led to some of the war's most brutal moments. After a Lancastrian victory at Wakefield in 1460, Richard of York was killed, and his head, crowned with a paper crown, was displayed on the walls of York. This was a grim spectacle, partly attributed to Margaret's vindictive spirit and her passionate response to the challenges to her family. Her personal feelings, born from her profound connection to her vulnerable husband and their son, fueled the cycle of violence. She fought battles like Towton in 1461, one of the bloodiest engagements on English soil, where the Lancastrian cause suffered a devastating defeat, forcing her and Henry into exile in Scotland. Even after her son Edward was killed at the Battle of Tewkesbury in 1471, and Henry VI was murdered in the Tower of London. Shortly after, Margaret's spirit remained unbroken. Though her fight was over, her love life, defined by the tragic circumstances of her husband's illness and her desperate efforts to protect her son, had directly plunged England into decades of brutal civil war. She spent the rest of her life in France, a prisoner of circumstance, but her legacy as a queen who fought with unparalleled ferocity for her family's claim to the throne remains. Margaret of Anjou's fierce maternal love and wifely devotion, entwined with the complexities of Henry VI's mental state and the dynastic ambitions of the Yorkists, leaving an indelible mark on the political landscape and royal succession of medieval England. Number 7. Elizabeth Woodville. Her life was a whirlwind of secret marriages, scandalous revelations, and the high-stakes politics of the Wars of the Roses. Elizabeth Woodville, born around 1437, was no princess. She was a gentlewoman, a widow with 2 young sons, from her first marriage to Sir John Grey of Groby, a Lancastrian knight, who died fighting for Henry VI at the Second Battle of St. Albans. Her family, the Woodvilles, were not among the highest nobility. Her father was merely a knight. This background made her an unlikely candidate for a queen, especially during a time when royal marriages were primarily about alliances and dynastic power. But fate, or perhaps a powerful and unexpected love, had other plans for Elizabeth. The year was 1464, and England was in the throes of the Wars of the Roses. Edward IV, a medic, handsome and victorious young king from the House of York, was firmly on the throne. One day, while hunting in Whittlewood Forest, he supposedly met Elizabeth Woodville, who was there to petition the king for the return of her deceased husband's lands. Accounts vary, but what is clear is that Edward was immediately captivated by her beauty and spirit. He proposed marriage, and Elizabeth, a virtuous woman, reportedly refused to become his mistress, insisting on marriage. What happened next was a bombshell that reverberated through the English court and beyond, directly sparking fresh turmoil in the ongoing Civil War. On May 1, 1464, King Edward IV secretly married Elizabeth Woodville. The ceremony was discreet, reportedly held early in the morning in a private manor house, with only a few witnesses. This secret marriage, a dramatic departure from centuries of royal tradition, was not revealed to the public or even to Edward's closest advisors for several months. When Edward finally announced his marriage in September 1464, the reaction was one of shock and outrage, particularly from his most powerful ally and kingmaker, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick. Warwick had been negotiating a marriage alliance for Edward with a French princess, a politically advantageous match that would have secured peace with France and bolstered Edward's standing among European monarchs. King's personal love life, his unexpected and scandalous choice of bride, completely upended Warwick's carefully laid plans and insulted his political authority. This secret love match, driven by Edward's personal desire rather than political expediency, was a monumental decision that directly led to the fracturing of the Yorkist power base. The consequences of Elizabeth Woodville's love life with Edward IV were immediate and profound. The Woodville family, formerly minor nobility, were suddenly elevated to immense power and influence at court. Elizabeth's large family, including her numerous siblings, were married into prominent noble families, displacing many of Warwick's allies. This rapid rise of the Woodvilles, seen by the established aristocracy as upstarts and a threat to their own positions, further enraged Warwick and his supporters. King's deeply personal choice of a queen and his subsequent favoritism towards her family transformed a political alliance into a personal feud. The animosity between Edward IV and Warwick escalated, leading to a bitter power struggle. Historians like Charles Ross note that Edward's marriage to Elizabeth was a turning point, alienating Warwick and ultimately driving him into rebellion against the very king he had helped put on the throne. Warwick, now known as the Kingmaker, openly rebelled against Edward IV, at one point even briefly deposing him and restoring Henry VI to the throne. This tumultuous period, directly stemming from the fallout of Edward and Elizabeth's marriage, plunged England back into civil war. Elizabeth herself faced danger and exile during these times, taking sanctuary in Westminster Abbey with her children during periods of Lancastrian resurgence. Her children, with Edward, including the future Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, were the legitimate heirs to the throne, but their very existence was a constant reminder of their parents' unconventional marriage and the instability it had brought. The political landscape of England was permanently altered by this unexpected love match. Edward IV eventually triumphed over Warwick and his allies, consolidating his power. Elizabeth bore him 10 children, securing the Yorkist succession. However, after Edward IV's sudden death in 1483, Elizabeth's love life and its unusual origins once again came back to haunt her. Her young son Edward V was too young to rule, and his uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, was appointed protector. But Richard, driven by ambition and exploiting the lingering doubts about the legitimacy of Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth, some suggesting a pre-contract to another woman that would invalidate his marriage to Elizabeth, seized the throne for himself. Richard declared Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth null and void, effectively making their children illegitimate. The princes in the Tower, Edward V and his younger brother Richard, vanished. Their fate a chilling mystery to this day. This act, the culmination of the legal and political instability surrounding Elizabeth's marriage, was a direct result of the king's initial secret love affair. Elizabeth Woodville, from queen to a widow fighting for her children's claims, played a crucial role in the ultimate resolution of the Wars of the Roses. She eventually made an alliance with Margaret Beaufort, the mother of Henry Tudor, uniting their factions against Richard III. This alliance, born of a mother's desperate love for her missing children and a desire for stability, ultimately led to Henry Tudor's victory at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485 and the establishment of the Tudor dynasty. Elizabeth's daughter, Elizabeth of York, married Henry Tudor, symbolically uniting the houses of York and Lancaster and bringing an end to decades of bloodshed. The scandalous secret marriage that began Elizabeth Woodville's incredible journey, a testament to a king's personal desire over political prudence, irrevocably shaped the succession, ignited major conflicts, and ultimately led to the very end of medieval English monarchy.